Hey everybody, this is JDGaming back today with part 3 of Get Better at Yu-Gi-Oh! Goal-Oriented Dueling. So last time we built a deck core that focused on bringing out Xyz monsters that could help us push for damage and prevent our opponent's plays, and this time we're going to flesh out this deck by adding cards to the main and extra that allow us to reach our goal of Xyz summoning more effectively, as well as play cards that will help us hinder the opponent. Basically the idea is with an 18 card core, we don't have a 40 card minimum deck. So in order to make sure we don't sacrifice consistency, we want to make sure that we both boost our chances of reaching our goals while hurting the opponent, and then that'll give us a balanced deck of 40 that will actually function in a real game scenario. First off, just some Xyz monsters I want to throw in. We're going to start off with Utopic Future. This card needs 2 Xyz monsters that are not numbers in order to summon, but because we have cards like the Trapeze Magician, Abyss Dweller, Castel, and Rafflesia, all of which are not number monsters, we can use any 2 of them to summon Utopic Future, which then has a walling effect. You can't die in battle, can't die from card effects, and you have the ability to steal your opponent's cards, which is a very tough cookie to crumble. This is going to be something that we play because we don't have to do anything different with our main core to bring it out. Trick Clown comes back, we have free searches off cards like King that will let us bring out an additional Gigabyte to make the second Xyz summon, and this card becomes a really easy play that we don't have to sacrifice anything to make. We'll also play stuff like Giant Hand, because this is like Rafflesia. Interfere with your opponent's Monarch effects, or any other effects your opponent may use to try to advance their position. Cards like Gagaga Cowboy can solve your opponent's big monsters by not targeting and just attacking right into or over them, and it has that nice burn effect that made it so popular for ending games without attacking as well. We'll play Diamond Crab King just because with the double attack on Trapeze Magician, 3,000 times 2 is 6,000, add the 2,500, and you suddenly have a whopping 8,500 damage on the board on a clear field, so that helps us do more damage than the opponent may expect of us. We'll play this Utopia suite here, and the main reason is for this final card here, Utopia the Lightning, who basically says your opponent can't respond if it battles in either direction, and you can double his attack to 5,000 by detaching 2 materials from him. So if you have 2 materials here and 2 copies of Utopia in the deck, you'll actually be able to utilize it for 2 attack pumps into 5,000 on this Lightning. So now you can attack over a monster, do probably 2,000 to 3,000 damage, and then if your opponent tries to attack you, well, they probably won't because of that extra material. They'll have to get rid of it some other way, or you'll be dishing out a ton of damage as well. The ability to stop the opponent from responding with any cards or activating them until you're done with battle also means we can break apart the strategies of decks like Cosmo and Burning Abyss that trigger when they hit the grave and give them the resilience they need to keep fighting back at you and grind out your cards. So very powerful card that we must run to the fullest potential. Now that our extra deck is a little more developed, we're going to go and add cards to the main deck. First, I want to add some things that help us extend our plays and make them even better. First off, we'll run 1 Nefarious Archfiend, Eater of Nefariousness. This guy is just like Gigabyte in that if you have a spellcaster, you drop him to the board, so that helps us extend our plays. He's a beast, unfortunately, so we can't fetch him with King of the Feral Imps, but because the stats are 15,200 just like Gigabyte, when Gigabyte gets destroyed, if the opponent tries to interfere with it or you just set it as a bluff or whatever, you can actually fetch this card out. The main reason we want to play this as kind of our 4th copy of Gigabyte is it has a second ability. When it is in the graveyard in the opponent's end phase, you can get rid of one of the monsters you don't want on your board, like a Trick Clown or a monster with Trick Clown as material, and bring this guy back. If that sends Trick Clown to the grave, you'll get the clown right back if you haven't used it already, and that gives us 2 monsters without even a normal summon to go for an Xyz play on the following turn. So this is kind of like an alternative version of Heroic Challenger Thousand Blades from the popular Clown Blade deck. That will help us fight back in case the opponent is killing our Gigabytes and other materials. But in addition to that, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Instant Fusion to both start our plays and to extend them, with of course the 1 copy of Norden. The main reason I want to play 3 is I want to maximize the consistency that I see this early. I did another video on math in this playlist, you could see in the description box down below, but to summarize, playing 3 copies gives you a much more significant boost in a chance to open with the card, 3 copies versus 2 in the main, as opposed to opening up doubles or triples. It's an increase from pretty much 30 to 40% if you play 3 copies as opposed to 2, whereas the chance of double drawing only goes up to like 5%. That's pretty much nothing. It's 1 in 20 games, and that's not even, how long your locals is going to be with all 3 games happening for each round. So really, I'm not too worried about double drawing Instant Fusion, but I do like the idea of having a free Xyz summon off of Norden especially if I've had a powerful Trick Clown play opening the game. So 3 Instant Fusion in this particular strategy is good because it helps recover if we need, but also push for more damage early on. With an additional water monster here, I want to be able to play a second copy of Abyss Dweller because this is an all-star card against Burning Abyss and Cosmo and a lot of other grave-oriented decks, so having access to it with even more water monsters sounds like a good idea to me. And then the next category of cards that we're going to play are ways to basically make the opponent unable to defend against us. So clearing out the opponent's defenses, because they'll be trying just as hard as we are to stop us. We'll play 3 copies of Twin Twisters. 3 some people may find excessive in certain decks, but in this strategy I like it because we can fix weird hands where we happen to draw dead instant fusion or stuff like that, but we can also kickstart our combos by discarding the Trick Clown from the hand, sending it straight to the grave, which gets it back to the field to make a Xyz play without actually needing a normal summon of the Trick Clown. So great combo card that helps get rid of the opponent's defenses and keep floodgates like Domain of the True Monarchs out of play. Speaking of Domain, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Breaker. This is a tech card I love in this deck. Pretty much it's a spellcaster, so you can do all of your special summons like you would in this deck, so no change in the synergy that you see, the card interactions that will get you your big Xyz plays, but with an ability to pump him up to 1900 attack, he can do a lot of damage as well, and you can remove that spell counter to get rid of annoying cards like Domain or just back row. You can trigger your opponent's defenses and get them out of the way. All around, this is a stellar card that helps round out a back row brigade that helps stop the opponent from stopping us. Now we want to play some additional defenses because I feel like we've devoted more than half of this deck to making our own plays, so we'll start off with 3 copies of the Hand Trap Max C. I consider the other hand traps, but mainly the reason I want Max C is because this is a card that we can use to draw even more cards. I suppose you could consider something like Pot of Desires in this deck because you don't need every copy of every card in your main deck, but Max C is a nice card that lets us respond to the opponent as early as game 1. It pressures them into stopping or giving us free resources, and if you've seen anything with this deck so far, free resources is great because you can translate that into a big field that pushes for game very quickly. So Max C is in here because it lets us actually get into our plays with those draws. We of course need some trap hole cards thanks to that Rafflesia, so I want to run Bottomless Trap Hole. This thing of course is just a generic removal, banishes things so it's pretty much permanent, and then the ability to get rid of mass monsters means we address pendulum monsters as well. We'll also play 2 copies of the new Floodgate Trap Hole because this guy has the ability to stop any monster, even though it doesn't remove that monster. Flipping things face down is better than you may think. If you hit a Burning Abyss monster, none of the additional Burning Abyss monsters can hit the board, which is pretty solid. Being able to flip down monsters like Dark Destroyer so that you can deal with it later or attack over it with Utopia the Lightning or something like that can be great as well. And just the fact that it can hit multiple monsters means we can hit Pendulum decks and clog up their fields. Great all-around card. We'll play a pair of them just so we have access to it, because this is actually something I wouldn't mind drawing. Finally, we'll play 1 Time Space Trap Hole. This is again to hit multiple monsters being summoned, but because it shuffles back to the deck, I find it a little better than other cards that are similar, like Void Trap Hole. Don't get me wrong, I love Void Trap Hole and its ability to negate a monster with kind of destruction immunity, but I don't want to trigger Dark Destroyer, so pretty much I want to play the Time Space as kind of a second copy of Bottomless, if you will. From there, we'll add a few more defenses. We'll play a pair of Breakthrough Skill because effect negation generally wins you games if you can hit your opponent's key monster effects. Think big plays like Trishula, Squire Summon, or if they happen to bring out a Floodgate monster like Vanities, you can stop that as well. So we have a wide variety of outs. Deal with things upon summon, deal with things after they're summoned, and as a power card we'll also play Solemn Warning. This is pretty much just to get rid of any type of summon in general, as you may expect, but that rounds out our defenses. Notice that they don't have to just be trap cards. Any card that gives you some sort of edge on your opponent as a response to their plays really functions as a defensive card, whether you call it a trap or not, and that's why Max C and a lot of other hand traps can fill in that role in certain decks. We'll play the 1 copy of Raigeki as a power spell. This is awesome in this deck, main deck, because we're playing a pair of Dweller, which means even Burning Abyss monsters don't have the resilience that they normally have. That would make Raigeki a subpar choice. So this is a must run. And finally, we actually have 3 tech slots left over, basically 3 blank slots that we could make into anything. I decided to adapt a little bit more against Twin Twisters and generic destruction effects by playing a Stardust Dragon and running a pair of tuner monsters called Flamvell Magician along with it. Flamvel unfortunately has no effect, and that's why he's kind of an iffy choice depending on the environment in which you play. But as a spellcaster, you can just go and special summon your Gigabyte, go for an Xyz play or whatever, but you also have the option to go for Stardust Dragon, who can then negate your opponent's Twin Twisters, Phantom Knight's Breaksword, whatever destruction effect your opponent may throw at you. So that's just my personal pick for this slot, but if you want to play something else, realize that by building this deck in terms of goals, you start to realize what slots are mandatory in the deck's functioning, the core, and then what cards did I put in to address what issues. It gives you a vantage point in which you can see, okay, this card's in here to help address these threats. This one isn't as useful in a wide set of situations as I thought, so maybe it's not as useful. It gives you a way to evaluate your options and then decide, what am I missing that I can put into the deck to help fight against the opponents that I plan on fighting. Finally, there's just one aspect to goal-oriented dueling that I want to bring up, and that's playing your cards in a way that allows you to achieve the goal. So far we spent all our time developing a deck that helps us counter our opponent's goals while reaching our own, but you gotta make sure you play the cards as intended so that you're actually able to translate your vision into reality. Good examples of this would be cards like Castel. This is a great problem solver that has the ability to shuffle away one of your opponent's cards, but as you saw, we only play one copy, and the main reason for that is if we play this carefully and use it only to either get us out of bad situations that stop us from playing the game, or we use it to stop an opponent's key piece that helps them continue playing the game, we can maximize utility for this card and make sure that we get the most out of it. You probably don't want to throw this out on an early random normal summon and get rid of that monster. That much is obvious, but try to extend that concept and say, okay, do I really need to solve this with Castel, or can I just run over this monster in battle? Likewise, cards like Twin Twisters and the infamous MST have always been said to be misplayed, blind MST, blind Twin Twisters, and the reason for that is you really want to make sure we're playing Twin Twisters to deal with two kinds of threats. Floodgates, like Domain of the True Monarch, Skill Drain, whatever, as well as defensive back row that your opponent can throw at you. If you're clearing out something like Domain that's immediately locking you, that's a more obvious play because you want to be able to reach your goal of Xyz summoning, getting out cards from your extra deck. But what if your opponent just has some random back row? Well, unless your opponent only has one or two and you can snipe all of them, and you're going for a big push that you need the board cleared for, you probably don't want to blindly play Twin Twisters. The main reason for that is if I burn this card now, not knowing what I'm getting rid of, my opponent might respond with a trap card that I can no longer deal with. What if they flip Skill Drain in my tracks, or a Vanity's Emptiness, and now I can't deal with that? Playing Twin Twisters when you most need it and absolutely have to go off to reach your goal will help make sure that you're getting out of the card what you put the card into the deck for. In this case, making sure our plays are able to be made and making sure that those plays stick. So that is all for this week's Get Better at Yu-Gi-Oh! Segment on goal-oriented dueling strategies. Remember to leave a comment down below with your thoughts on the matter and any questions you may have. Let me know any feedback on the series you have as a whole. I'd love to hear that and modify as necessary. Or if you just have any new ideas you'd like me to discuss for future episodes of the series, I'd love to hear those as well. Thanks guys, this is JDGaming. Hope you guys enjoyed once again, and I'll see you guys next time.